You're now watching two old farts making noises. Welcome to Canadian Art Today with your host, Paul Constable.
Oh, look at this motley crew. We're all back together because of the time change. David can stay up.
Yeah, we got a new graphic. We got a new graphic as well. Amazing.
Oh yeah. I like that, Dave. That's nice.
Yeah, I decided to do something when I'm in hibernation.
Yeah. So. Well, it made me take my hat off, so I'm good. Let me just put it right here.
Yeah.
Very nice. That's the first time I've seen that. That is really a cool graphic, David.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah, I was wanting to refresh it and must have read my mind. Perfect. Yeah, that's good.
Very
Appreciate
cool.
it. Yeah, we've got a great guest today. We always have good guests. I mean,
you do.
And Kevin Quinlan is going to be quite an inspiration to especially young people, young artists that are coming up, because this guy's worked in the trenches and as an artist, like working full-time as an artist, it's a tough gig. And making a living like that, and I'd like to, we're going to have a nice conversation about what he's doing in his mixed media from drawing, painting, sculpture. So he does some workshops and teaching kids and helping community. And so we're going to talk to him about that. And you can see some great work that he's been doing. And yeah, good seeing you again, David, too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's, as I say, it hasn't been out of choice, as you know, out of pressure of circumstances, Paul. It's
yeah. Well,
just crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. All these time zones everybody lives in, and of course, I'm in Europe. Steve's in the US. You're in Canada, so we were a little bit out of sync. So
well, we might.
So now we have 6 months of sync, gentlemen, and then we'll be out of sync again. So enjoy each other's company for the next 6 months.
Yeah.
So
we will.
Yeah. It'll be a comfort winter, I'm sure.
There you go.
And as long as you've got your coffee, you'll be good.
There you go.
Okay.
Should we bring our guest in?
We'll bring Kevin in. Perfect. Yeah.
All right. Kevin, here you come, my friend. And David and I are going to disappear. You guys have a wonderful interview. And we'll be back at the end to ask our usual stupid questions. See you guys later. Cheers.
Okay. See you later.
Very much.
Good morning. Yeah. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Paul.
Yeah, we got that big flag behind us. Holy smoly. Like, I think I'm just going to go. Well, we'll talk here for a little bit, then I'll put the graphic up. We were talking just in the beginning here about the that what it takes to become an artist. Like it's a full-time gig, really, if you're working a number of things in different ways, and we're going to go through some talk and look at some of the work that you're doing and just talk to you about that. I guess the journey, is what it is we all go through that. You and I have gone through similar types of journeys, like from your days at AOCA and the beginning stages of an art career. And can you tell us a little bit about those early days? Like, you guys traveled a bit, a little bit about the AOCA program, and that day you first knocked on the door. It kind of inspired me when I first heard that story, because I related very much to that. Can you relate to that a little bit, about that first days of trying to get in there and doing your thing with AOCA?
Well, sure. I can talk a little bit about that, because my introduction to AOCA, or Ontario College of Art, was kind of a fluke. I ran into somebody. I happened to be living in Toronto. I ran into somebody who knew about the college, told me about it, and I went downtown, walked into a school where every class was an art class, and I knew I was home.
Yeah.
So getting in was the problem. This was I guess my interview was 1974. I was trying to set up for the 75, 76 first year. And of course, you have to show portfolio with good samples of your work. And my portfolio was, very much in the beginner stages. I went in and had my interview, and I guess I didn't do very well, because about a month later, I got a nice little one-line letter from the art college. We regret to inform you, you have not been accepted for admission at this time. So after, being very disappointed, I wrote a letter back and told them that I didn't feel that I got a fair interview. They had 3 different instructors interviewing each person, and you all went into a big gym, and everybody had their interviews. So anyway, I told them I didn't think I got a fair hearing and I would like another interview. And no, I didn't want to wait until next year, as one had suggested. I wanted to do it now. Well, I was surprised. They sent me another letter and with another interview. And I went in, you padded my portfolio as much as I could over the month, adding more, thinking that I would impress them with sheer volume, if nothing else. Then went in and showed them the work and said, look, if I was Rembrandt, I would not be knocking on your door. But the fact is, I need art instruction. Look how underdeveloped my work is and how bad it is. And it worked. They let me in.
Yeah. No, and that it kind of builds that thick skin for an artist, the refusal part of your whole life, all the way through your life. I mean, the grants and all the things you apply for, be prepared for a no a number of times over your career of, those kind of applications, which kind of gets you to hone your skills a little bit. Like you said, is it about padding the portfolio? Is it about putting good work in that portfolio, knowing what good work is? And, certain grants and things you write for. I mean, you're such a successful grant writer, I can tell.
Never had a successful grant application yet. Everyone I've sent in has always been turned down.
Well, there's a skill set for those things, but you know what? I guess we do benefit from it when we do our programming. They are sponsored. Usually the programs are sponsored through funding, through the programming. And I think you and I both have benefited from those situations by the galleries submitting and getting funding for us to teach or do a workshop or do those things. So on your day-to-day, what kind of stuff do you do on a day-to-day thing? Like where, your day starts? I mean, you work in a number of medias, right? You do portraits and you do some painting, drawing, figurative work, some sculpture. How do those do they all fit together? How do they fit together in in what you do, Kevin? It's your makeup. How does that mesh together?
Well, it's hard to sort of see them all together. I look at each thing that I do one thing at a time. I've found that with the art business, if we want to call it that, I guess it is, there's quite a lot of variety. And for me, because I had good training, I'm able to do drawing, painting, and sculpture. So I try to make sure I have a good, solid representation in all 3 areas. So it depends on the time of year as to what my schedule is. I teach part-time. I do commissioned portraits part-time. I produce my own work and have shows, and sometimes I'm fortunate enough to sell a piece. But I always try to make sure that every day I do something. And not every day I will get up and, I'm bursting with creative energy and ready to do a painting. I don't always feel that every day. But I make sure, even if I don't feel like doing that, I do a little sketch or, work on a little maquette or something like that, so that it's something creative. And very often what happens with me is I'll start working on something thinking, okay, I'm only going to spend 10 minutes on this. Well, 10 hours later, I'm still working on the same thing. So with me, I guess it's getting started. That's the thing. And once I'm started on something, I can work on it.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, I guess some of that comes from experience, understanding that you're independent and you're on your own. There's nobody else there, trying to find that motivation. You're a member of some groups and organizations a little bit, and you may go for the odd coffee with someone, but generally it's a lonely career. You're sitting there at your desk or studio at your easel and you're doing your work. I'm gonna get the guys to bring up the first slide here if they can, and we'll go through that. There we go. Yeah, we'll just go off to the side here a bit. So this gives some people a bit of the perspective. I mean, I've seen this piece in person, and when I saw this piece, I went, "Oh, that's a strange piece." But when I blew it up, I thought, "Oh man, look at the textures that are happening in the canoe." Can you tell us a little bit about this project? I mean, well, I think there's near the end we'll do some more closer up on it, but in the beginning, I thought this was a really good slide for the introduction on what we're doing. And can you talk about this project a little bit?
Sure. Okay. So this particular piece is about 11 feet. No, sorry. The canoe is 16 feet long. The figure is, if he stood up, he would be about 5'10", 6 feet, something like that. So it's a life-size piece. I did it as part of our sculpture symposium at the North Battleford Chapel Gallery. I've got a long history with North Battleford and the Chapel Gallery. I taught my first art class in North Battleford in '81, and I've been very connected with the community over the years. I taught part-time classes there for many years, evening classes, afternoon classes, just one day a week as I was going through on my route. Then I did the Artist in Residence program in North Battleford that's sponsored by Saskatchewan Arts Board. So I was hired there for a year as Artist in Residence. They gave me a spot in the big community studio. We had people coming and going and drawing classes, painting classes, sculpture classes. Anyway, at one of the projects we did was a mini sculpture symposium in front of the Chapel Gallery. The idea was to create a sculpture garden outside of the gallery because, of course, by the name Chapel Gallery, it used to be a chapel, and it didn't look as artsy as it could have. It looked a little more like a chapel. So putting the sculpture garden around was the idea to solve that problem. So anyway, we did a small symposium there just as part of the residency program. Then about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years later, I came back long after the residency had ended. I came back as part of Prairie Sculptors Association, which is a long-standing sculpture group in Saskatchewan. And we had a sculpture symposium there. And there were about 10 different artists. And these were sculptors who were very skilled and been working on their, various types of sculpture for years and years. We stayed for 2 weeks. And I did this piece. I say I did it in 2 weeks. No, I started it, bit off more than I could ever chew in 2 weeks. Doing a 2-month project in 2 weeks. I ended up going back, day after day after day, and making a drive 80 miles up, 80 miles back. So it took quite a while to finish. But when I finished it, I quite liked it. So what it is, he's supposed to be on a wave. The wave's a little bit hard to see. The wave is made of rebar. This is steel rebar. He's supposed to be riding the wave. The canoe's tipped a little bit. And I have a long history of canoeing of my own. I have a canoe that I've owned for 50 years. So I really like, canoeing itself. And my idea with this was that when you're in a canoe, you're on your own. It's just you. No one else is steering the boat. You can ride with the current. If you try to fight it, you're in trouble. And I thought of the first people who came through Saskatchewan, and boat travel was a big thing. And I put the high prows on this. I know it's kind of a more of a Mohawk style canoe, out of the east, and we're in the west, and maybe those prows are a little high. We don't have the big waves here that they have in those big eastern lakes. So this is why the high prow canoe's there. But I just liked it. So I made it that way. And, it was on display in North Battleford for 3 years as per our contract for the symposium. And then I moved it down to, after some negotiation, moved it down to the city of Martensville, which is where this picture is taken. It's actually in the park in Martensville. And just behind those trees, there's a big creek. So if you see it at the right angle, he's in front of the creek. But of course, this is winter. And winter is a beautiful time to photograph it because rebar is hard to photograph because you can see through it. So when you get a busy background, you can't even see the piece. So the white background, I think, works very well to be able to see the piece. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the city of Martensville rented it for several years. And then they wrote me a letter one day and said that they would like to purchase it. So after a bit of negotiation, they purchased it. So it now belongs to the city of Martensville. Yeah. But I still go up and see it. It'll always be mine. You know how it is when you create a piece.
It's a beautiful piece, and it's just like this beautiful line drawing. Like it's cross-hatched with rebar. And this is where we'll get through some of this other stuff here we're talking about. But we're jumping here a little bit. But we'll go into some of the other loves that you have, the figure and some of the works. And can you talk about like the media? What are you working in this? And
sure, I'll talk about both. Well, first of all, on the right-hand side, these would be 10-minute poses from the drawing class. We have a Saturday group where we work from the model every week. And these would be done from the live model. And this was when I was working in Chinese ink. I got a little set of Chinese inks with the brushes and the grinding stones. So for a while, I was all about Chinese ink. And so this is done with a brush. You grind the ink on the stone. You grind up a couple of different values of ink. Like you can see, I've got full tone in the hair and about a quarter of a tone in the shadows and about a half tone in the line. So you mix up these different tones and then it's one shot. You either make it or you don't. So working with the live model helps to keep my line accurate. Now, the one on the left, that is a fired clay piece. And this is a white clay, bright white clay. It's Laguna clay, they call it. And it comes out of a quarry in Laguna, California. And it seems odd for a prairie artist to be importing clay when we have the best clay in the world at Medicine Hat. But anyway, this stuff is bright white. It is about, I don't know how tall it is, maybe 16 inches tall. So I built it up, hollowed it out. I worked with a model and built it up, hollowed it out, and then, dry it very, very carefully and then fire it. And I have a really nice piece of soapstone. That's the base underneath. So I mounted it on that.
Well, they're very, it's a very nice feeling through what we're doing. So what we're talking about is the different types of sculpture that you can do. I mean, our audience is varied from professional artists to, emerging and young and non-artists at all. So they're trying to understand how this process works, right? So the drawing aspect and the model and understanding the figure into the actual forming of the figure. A lot of people just paint them. They've never actually formed things in clay to understand the shapes and figures, so some artists can paint a portrait really well, or a figure very well, but they've actually never built anything in proportion in clay. So it's a great skill set to have and an understanding of the model and the figure and how they all kind of work together. And we'll just go through. We're going to go through a little bit of your early stage, like the drawing, painting things, and I think we'll conclude with your sculpture and the tail end of what we're doing here. But this kind of leads into. I heard this one took a while to build. This painting. Was this one on your table for a while?
This was on my table for a while. Yeah, this is a watercolor. Full sheet of watercolor paper. What is that? 28 by 20 or something like that. I should know. But I'm still not 100% clear on whether I'm finished this or not. You know, these paintings, sometimes I'll work on something and then absolutely finish it, and then a week later I pick it up and work on it again. So this one is a young singer, and it is a little bit about her music. It's a little bit about the Ness Creek Music Festival. In the bottom left-hand corner, you can see the Ness Creek stage and a few people in the audience. Then above, I've tried to put in the constellations that you see over the stage, because when you're sitting in the audience, you see the North Star right on top of the stage. So I don't have the North Star because there's a guitar player in front of it, but I have the big, I do have the North Star. Wait a minute. There it is on the end of the Little Dipper, just by her elbow. But anyway, I try to do that in my paintings. I try to be fairly accurate. The owl is, symbol of wisdom, but it's also the symbol of heresy, in the old days in paintings. So maybe what she has to say isn't what everyone wants to hear. The wild goose flying, very much the prairies, people come, people go, and musicians traveling all the time. That's part of her with her case.
Yeah.
Her name is Steph Cameron.
Oh.
And if you haven't heard her music, you should just Google it. Steph Cameron. She's a wonderful, wonderful musician.
So basically, this is a Ness Creek piece about an artist at Ness Creek, possibly, or
it is a Ness Creek piece, yes. And I met her actually through the Saturday morning drawing class. And then after I met her, I found out that she's actually Sandy's cousin, my partner's cousin. My partner has a lot of cousins, and this is one of them.
That's awesome. It's really nice. It's nice to be able to do pieces of work where the people in them. They have a story that is sort of connected with you in some way, and they bring out a special kind of thing that's a little bit different than if you just did a commission for somebody you didn't know, right? You just, they want a portrait done. But this one is a real collage of lifestyle in her. So she got 5 figures in here, or 4 figures, and all the symbolisms that are built into it. It's kind of cool. Now, I've always kind of liked that piece. There's another one here coming up that will.
There's 5 figures. You missed the little head above. See up on top, right? Okay, yeah. Above her head. That's the 5th one, and 5. There's 5 points in a pentacle, so they're definitely 5 pieces.
Yeah. Symbolism. So this is probably one of the more surreal pieces. This one I found it was kind of, again, highly symbolic pieces that are speaking to each other. And you speak to this one a little bit and tell us what's going on here.
This one is oil on canvas. It's 30 by 40. I did this a few years ago. My daughter was taking ballet, and this dancer was actually her ballet teacher. And I was able to do some drawings, and I, got a couple of photographs and this and that. Then on another separate artist in residence project I was doing out in Watrous, I was out there in a studio for a year. I met this little horse, and the horse belonged to some friends of mine. And it was just this gorgeous little sorrel with the palomino mane and tail. And it was a good thing I put it in the painting, because the next year the mane and tail turned red. So that was just when it was a colt. So this painting was, it happened at the time of the alignment of the planets, which happens every few years. So there was a point where you could see Saturn, Jupiter, what are the others? Venus, and I think Mars over on the right, you could see in the morning, and you could see the other ones in the evening, and they were all in that same area of the sky. And at one point, the moon moved across that area. So to me, I thought that was very interesting. This whole connection that we have to our solar system. So this is a little bit about outer space, but it's also about inner space because, she's on this dance floor that, the lines of the floor, of course, designed to carry us back into space. And then the ruins here behind the old building, they're actually the original buildings from the Miette Hot Springs, which you probably know, being an Edmonton guy, Miette Hot Springs, in between Edmonton and Jasper. And the old buildings have all of these mineral colors dripping down the walls, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting piece. And it's got a lot of mystery in it. And there's a story there. And it's really nice to feel and understand how that story. And we'll figure out how this horse is now making a play into the rest of your life here as we move along.
Well, one more thing about this. When this was in a gallery, I had a lady going through the gallery who was she was a viewer. I didn't know her. But anyway, she came up and gave me the longest, most wonderful explanation of what I must have meant when I did this painting. And I really wish I would have taped it because she had way better ideas than I did. To me, it's a visual thing. It's a feeling thing, and other people see it. And sometimes other people are able to verbalize it even more accurately than the artist does.
Yeah. And I think that's a nice thing about art is people see different things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the magic about stuff. That's how things, we love stories and rumors about our work. I mean, that's okay. We're going to get into some of the sculpture. These ones are a few years old.
They're a couple years old. Yeah, this one, I don't know, probably 10 or 12 years old. This one actually was done in collaboration with another artist from Watrous. Her name is Linda Leslie. She actually owned the horse in the last painting. So, friends from Watrous.
Yeah.
And Linda and I did this together. It took, several months. They're on a farm, so they had a big barn that we worked in. It's welded rebar armature, and then a stucco mesh put on top of that, and then concrete laid in on top. Okay. And we looked for the longest time to try to find wheels for this railroad pumper car. And we knew that we weren't going to be able to fashion the wheels. They just wouldn't be round enough. They wouldn't look good enough. And we contacted both railroads. No, they don't have any wheels like that in any junkyard. So finally, one of the farmers around Watrous had wheels from an old horse-drawn hay cutter. And this cutter had one wheel in the front to keep the line going. Or was it a cultivator? Oh boy, see, I'm supposed to know all this stuff. But anyway, he came up with 4 wheels, so we used that. This took quite a long time to do. It's in Watrous now, corner of Highway 2 and Main Street. And you can just see on the base, all we can see in the picture are a bunch of little squares. But what those squares are, this was a part of Linda's contribution to the project. She made up these little clay squares, little tiles. And when they had the Watrous homecoming, and 100-year farmers were given awards, it was a big homecoming. So everyone was home. So she had each family do a tile. So each of these tiles have the names of Watrous people. And the tiles go all the way around the base. There's hundreds.
Yeah, there's lots of tiles on there. Yeah.
Mm. And it kind of looks like it's sitting on one of the old pork pie hats. It's kind of that shape.
So
but the tiles, it's quite neat.
So the finish on that, how did you buff that cement and tone it or paint it?
Well, no, with concrete, you can't really do too much. We laid it all in and it's a polymer concrete. So we added a polymer to it as we built it up. But then the final color that went on, because when you work on a concrete piece, you get all different colors. This one's a little darker, that's a little lighter, and you get these kind of blotches. We thought it would be good to put a color on. So what this is concrete pigment that you can buy, construction store, and buy various colors, mixed with polymer emulsion.
Yeah.
and just put right on the surface.
You know, it's a nice solid piece. I mean, it's very much of the area. You understand these are railway towns, a lot of them. That's what developed our country, was the railway as it came through. Right?
Yeah. Well, and just one more thing, a personal
right.
touch just on that one. The two men that are on the cart, very much connected to Linda and I, because the tall fellow is Linda's uncle Sam, who worked his whole career for the CP Railway. And the fellow in the slouch hat, the shorter, wider guy, is my uncle Louis, who worked his whole career with CN Railroad. So they were both railroad men. So we tried to make them our uncles, so a little bit of that connection.
So they
yes,
were,
the railroad sure opened up
really, they went really fast on the railway because one was fighting the other one, up, down, up, down, up, down.
Probably.
The two railway systems, yeah.
A jigger, that's what they called those cars.
They did, yes.
Yeah.
So there's another one in that similar style, correct? The concrete?
Yeah, this one was first.
Yeah.
And this is welded steel. Then I don't think I used stucco mesh. This was my first, so I used chicken wire instead of stucco mesh. Oh, that was a little bit harder. Stucco mesh is the thing because it holds the concrete. But in any case, it still worked. I just used several layers of chicken wire. Mm-hmm. So this one was, was at that point on the corner of Broadway and 10th Street in Saskatoon. And Broadway is kind of an artsy area. You see buskers all over the place. But at the time, and this is a few years ago again, at the time, the buskers were seen as being, very quaint. They were part of the neighborhood. They showed, the sort of bohemian quality of the neighborhood. All very nice, except that you wouldn't want to have them actually in front of my place of business because they might impede customer flow. So nice to have the buskers, but over there. So my idea was to iconize these musicians. We all tend to be big fans of the big musicians, the huge concert halls. They make $1 million, therefore they must be good musicians. But sometimes the best music you ever heard is around people's kitchen tables, or some guy sitting on a corner playing the most incredible slide guitar I've ever heard in my life. So sometimes these buskers, they're out there for the sake of art. It's art for art's sake. And yeah, sure, maybe they collect a little bit of money. I remember one time, the only time in my life I was ever busking was on this very corner, and I was with some friends who were the real musicians, and I was tapping along on my bongos. And anyway, we were there about an hour playing all these songs, and we made enough money for all of us to go and have a coffee, but not enough for pie. So busking is a labor of love, So that was kind of the idea behind this particular piece, was busking and two acoustic musicians. I did it back in the 90s, which is why the girl has her army boots. They were much in style.
Yeah. No, well, people understand that, like, Saskatoon's got a great program where they actually, you can apply and they'll pay you a rent money for your sculpture, and they'll put it on the corners of different parts of Saskatoon. And a number of artists I know, like yourself, have taken part of those programs. I think the Buskers was part of that program. Is that correct? Is that?
Oh, it was. Yeah, that's the placemaker program, and it's a lease program where they originally had 10 different sites, and they would lease the sculpture from the artist for a couple of years. Then, if it was popular, they would add another couple of years, and so on. And sometimes they buy it at the end, sometimes they don't. In the end, this one was not purchased. I wasn't too concerned because it was there for, I don't know, must have been 14 years or something. They paid me more money in lease fees than I would have sold it to them for in the first place, and I still own the piece. I've moved it out to Watrous, and it's now in the yard of the Watrous Art Gallery. And it's kind of interesting because this piece and the railroad workers are both in the same town. So if people want to see two of the same style, they're there.
Yeah, no, it's good to see, and it's a good solid piece. And I know I know of the program, and I think it's thought of fondly. I mean, the funds come from parking meter money, part of it, some of the funds from it.
Yeah, that's
So,
right.
you know what? So you pay $1 or $2 for parking, understanding that you're helping support, these sculptures and the artists in the community. So this one, this was a big piece, and it sits outside, not I guess adjacent to the Reme Modern Art Gallery in Saskatoon. And you've done a number of cats over the years, and I think this one is probably, I guess, structurally, muscularly, it's you can see how you're almost drawing with rebar. Like this is this three-dimensional drawing. I call it almost. It's almost like you put it in a CAD program, kind of the way you build the muscle structures and things, and put them together. Can you talk about? Is this a cat, cougar, jaguar? What is this animal basically? This cat.
Well, that's always up for question. I call it Saskatoon cougar for two reasons. One, kind of a chuckle at some of my friends. I just thought I'd have a giggle, but also because a real live cougar went up 19th Street all the way to Avenue K about 2 years before I did this. And this cougar went right up the sidewalk, scared everybody. So I thought that would be a good subject. This was on 19th Street, and it's in a spot that is, hard to access. It's under a bridge. It's behind some pillars. It's on an angle. So it needed a piece that would fit into that kind of, unorthodox spot. And it's 13 feet long. It's made out of welded rebar, and it is a line drawing, and it's very definitely cross-hatched. And I'm just going to show you the connection here. This is a book that just came out this spring, and it's the Saskatchewan Agricultural Hall of Fame. And I've been the portrait artist for the Hall of Fame for many years. And if you look at any one of the drawings, they're all in, this whole book is my drawings. I love this book. It is so great. But anyway, I only like it because it's my drawings. No, I shouldn't say that. No, it's actually, there's a history of the agriculture in Canada. What you cannot see on here are the crosshatched lines. When I learned drawing, I learned old master style. Everything is crosshatched. So same thing with the cougar. It's the lines are describing the form. They follow the form. Each line is laid in to describe the form. And as you eventually you get to a point where it's a line drawing in the air. It's a three-dimensional line drawing in the air. So working with this rebar has really changed. It started off being kind of a simplified medium that would be a little bit quicker to work in, but it really grew into something that was connected with everything else I did. So yeah, very much a cross-hatched three-dimensional line drawing.
Yeah, and I see that. This is what I'm seeing through your work. I mean, I've watched what you do for a number of years. We've known each other for a number of years, but this, the pieces are becoming more sophisticated. I mean, you're dealing with shapes and volume. And again, those many, many years of cross-hatching and building two-dimensional black and white characters, like for your Hall of Fame portraits that you do, you can see that in the sculpture. Like, this is what I'm saying. One form is helping the next form, and you keep your skill set going all the time. Like you said, every day you get up and you do something, whether you do a drawing or whether you do, I think you make some little masking tape, little animals as well. So probably got hundreds of those things made out of masking tape, little three-dimensional sculptures that you do, or mask making. So those things keep your hand and your eye active as far as scale and subject matter. And you anyway, the cat is a beautiful piece. You see what else? I found this one.
Oh yeah, this is one from Brightwater.
So again, it's cross hatching, right? It's still drawing with line, right? But can you talk about the Brightwater program, a little bit about what you do there and the reason why this thing's made out of, well, how you built this thing? Like, is this your elk or a deer or?
It was supposed to be a mule deer, and I actually did this in collaboration with a group of kids, or it started out that way. The kids kind of one by one disappeared, and I ended up, it was one person handing me sticks, and I ended up doing quite a bit of it. But in any case, Brightwater is a facility that is owned by Saskatoon Board of Education, and it's basically an outdoor learning center, right? Science, art, Indigenous knowledge, all learned. And what they do is they send classes of middle school students out to Brightwater, and they run through a series of workshops. There'll be a science workshop, hands-on on the land, ethnobotany, hands-on on the land, and an art project. And when the weather is good, we go and sit on the side of the hill. We do paintings of the creek. In this one, we obviously didn't do it in winter. I photographed it in winter, but they're all tied together with jute twine. So if we did that in the fall, and all kinds of different projects. And Brightwater's been quite good for me. I've done a lot of teaching over the years. Brightwater is nice and close. It's part-time, and I get to work with young artists. And I'm beginning to think now, I'm starting to look at my age and realize that, I'm not going to be able to teach forever. I have a lot of information to pass on. I might not have the time to develop with someone for 20 years. So whatever I do has to be quick. So working with younger artists in this kind of a context fulfills that for me. I feel as though I'm getting that information out to young artists who need it. And in this case, people that are just starting out and trying to give them some good, solid art instruction that really will help them to improve.
Yeah. Maybe understanding that art can be a part of your whole life. Like whether you're going to be a plumber or a welder or a architect, doesn't matter, or a techie with a computer, understanding that art will help you somewhere. It's sort of like math. Math does help you at some point in everything you do. And I think art is the same, and the appreciation of what art does. Well, I built one of these. I think you and I built one of these years ago as well. And we initially had built it to be a project that would be lit in fire. So is this one still standing?
No, this one has the jute twine was, made to go back to the environment, and it did. So it's kind of fallen over.
I thought
now a pile of brush.
I thought maybe it had attracted a friend and it banged it over or something.
Oh, yeah. Almost. Well, I don't know, because I did come along one day and it was down, but I don't think an animal would have done it. There was another one though that we did it's to the left of this one, of the dire wolf, and it's still standing. The dire wolf turned out pretty well. We may do another one of these though. It was just too much fun, and I think it's a good thing for kids to realize that you can do art with found materials, that you don't have to spend a lot of money.
That's right. Yeah.
This was basically free. We took a little bit of string and a bunch of sticks and tied them together.
They're very cool to see on the landscape. They're just fun things.
Yeah.
So again, the animal, the horse, it reappears in your work regularly. I think you made a couple of these ones. Symposium. They're a little bit hard to see because there's so much going on in the background, but
it's hard to see here. I thought I had a couple of pictures of it though, and I thought I had one where they were easier to see.
Yeah, it's a little hard, but the shadows on the floor were amazing, just amazing to see as they came through, because those line drawings became perpendicular to the three-dimensional figure. So the line drawing lay on the floor with the three-dimensional horse standing vertically. So it's really nice to see a cross-light on these pieces as it moves around. Anyway, it's I think this was one of two pieces, but I just thought people should see. So this one's not as filled in as much. as the cougar. It's more. Is it meant to be this way to embrace the environment around it going through the figure, or the reasoning for more this looser line?
Well, I started off with the idea that it was going to be, filled in a lot more, like the cougar or like the paddle your own canoe. There, each of the spaces is filled in. But I got to the point in this one where it was just finished. And sometimes a painting, a drawing, a sculpture will do that. I'm working along and I have this idea in my mind of exactly how I want it, but the material, the piece informs the artwork as well. And in this one, I just got to a point where, okay, if I start putting a bunch of stuff on here, it's not going to improve it. In fact, I'm going to lose all those beautiful negative shapes. And this is as much about the shapes between the rebar as it is about the piece itself. Also, the way it works with the light. The shadows are great. And outside, it's even better. The way shadows move across the land or move across the snow, depending on the time. I really like the opening. So what happened was that this was supposed to be a 2-week symposium I was going to do at Horse. I got to the end of 1 week and I was finished. So I did a second one and ended up having a pair of horses. And yeah, they're a little lighter. They're not, solid. Maybe some people might call them a sketch, but I don't think so. I think they're finished pieces. And I really like the light, lively lines. And these are not really even full-size horses. They're ponies. Like at the top of his head, he's probably only about 5.5 feet tall. So for a horse, that's not real big. Yeah, and those ponies are always really light and they're dancing around. And so that's part of it too.
Yeah.
Keeping it light.
So that's great, Kevin. We went through a number of pieces of your work here, and you can see I've got a picture of you there with it in, I guess that'd be the fall, maybe, or spring.
Yeah, and that must be in March.
Beside it. Yeah, it's a lovely, lovely piece. Yeah, I think the community really loves this piece. It's good to have pieces of work that people really embrace, and that becomes almost a symbol for that region, right? And we're saying Martinsville, but basically it's a region, it's the prairies, right? And you can really see in this one, we kind of blew it up a little bit, how that crosshatch really works beautifully. Like you can see the backside of that, the canoe in there in the top. It differentiates from the foreground, and you can see the figure in there right in the canoe. Just it's more solid. So it's a lovely piece, Kevin.
Oh, thank you. I worked hard on that, and it's one of these things you have a plan, but what you end up with isn't always what the plan was, and
I think that's the magic of it, right? There's you have a good starting point, and then when you conclude, you think, man, that's better than where I started. I had an idea, but it comes off, and it comes from experience of the drawing. And a lot of the artists today are not drawing enough. They need to draw way more. Start understanding I don't care if it's on a graphic pad or what, but draw more. Understand what you're doing more before you delve into something, and then all of a sudden there's disaster at the other end because your frustration, you haven't thought it out. What do you think, guys?
Talking about,
that's okay. No, talk. I was just going
to say, talking about drawing. At the time I went to OCA, Ontario College of Art, there was a real push on drawing. I took one of the last full studio courses that they offered. Now they're more into BFA and MFA programs, and it's not full studio. So I was very fortunate. So anyway, I got a good background in drawing, but I realized that my drawing wasn't quite where it needed to be. When I came home to Saskatchewan, I'm from here. I was born in Cut Knife, and I'm very at home in Saskatchewan. So anyway, I found a drawing workshop where they drew from the model, and I decided I would attend. And so every week I go and I draw from the model. And when I'm doing the portraits for the Agricultural Hall of Fame in the museum here in Saskatoon, I also do the portraits for the Transportation Hall of Fame in the Western Development Museum in Moose Jaw. When I'm doing those portraits, they have to be museum quality, and it has to be done by the deadline, and that's the way it works. So I don't have time to learn to draw on each one. So the fact that I go each and every week and I draw, it's a motor skill. And it's like, you're a basketball player, you go and you shoot, several hundred baskets every week. Well, it's the same kind of thing. When I go to my drawing class, I'm shooting baskets so that when I sit down to do a serious piece of work, it's there. That drawing is there because it's as much a motor skill as it is something learned and something intellectual. It's very physical.
That's why Steven's such a good basketball player.
What's that?
Sure. That's why I say I'm such a great basketball player. Out of every 100 shots, I make at least one. So
yeah, exactly.
It's a tough sport. No, your stuff is wonderful. I like all of it. So if our compound was bigger, I would want all your sculptures. But and I saw what they range in price, so they're actually not that bad. Like I think the cougar or the jaguar was like 15,000. Is that Canadian, right?
Yeah.
So it's make believe money. So it's $6 US. So it's very nice. No, your stuff is gorgeous, and the painting with the horse, absolutely beautiful. That was absolutely gorgeous, and the story behind it.
I learned a long time ago that you can put a huge price on your work and no one can buy it. Right. Or you can put a price that's reasonable for reasonable people and you'll sell some work. And maybe it's not, the pie in the sky kind of prices that everyone dreams of, but it's good and solid. I also like the idea of being able to share artwork. Like I don't do it just to have it in my studio. I do it so that people can enjoy it. And so making a reasonable price makes it affordable for people.
So as Paul knows, once in a while I buy some art. So the horse painting, is that one still for sale or is that been sold? Still for sale? Oh, we'll discuss. We'll discuss. But no, your stuff is
Stephen wants to buy
gorgeous. Everything. Thank you. So, and I do, which is bad. So that's why we have to move to a bigger house now. But anyway, but no, your stuff was absolutely wonderful and fascinating story. So I was like listening to it the whole time.
Just a very quick interjection then from me. The thing that I've found most, shall I say, stimulating, I think, Kevin, were the structures, the really open structures. I think you made a comment about the horse as the light changed through the day, that the image itself changed. And I think more public places should have less solid objects and more open objects because, it depends on when you go, it doesn't get boring then, because the light changes, the seasons change, and it takes the art with it. And
a lot of the cities are congested. They're like concrete and steel and tall glass. And you think an open structure doesn't impede the view because you're already getting claustrophobic in some of these big cities. So it's nice to see an open structure. There.
It's kind of like for me then, Paul, it's like, oh, well, I've seen it. You know what I mean? So when you walk through and you say, oh, I've seen it, your brain says you've seen it before. But when you see something and it's slightly different, that's a stimulation for you to go back and study it again. And I think that, I was really impressed by that. But
his horses are available too, by the way. Everything's available.
The problem is we don't have any place to put it yet.
Yeah, I know.
Soon.
It'll go. We'll have it all in the foyer of the Empire.
I would just I like the Jaguar or the Cougar. I like that because it's like 16 feet long. See, that I would put in when you first drive up to the house so people would see it. But it's in front of a museum, so now I have to hire a helicopter. We have to steal it. It's too much work. So it's okay. But no, the stuff was the artwork beautiful. This is why David and I leave the show when you guys actually really talk, and at the end we're the comic relief. But the artwork is beautiful. If you need to get a hold of Paul or Kevin, reach out to us. Everybody's details will be below. And we will put you in touch with them if you want to commission, I guess, Kevin for a piece, or if you just want to buy one of his works. His website will be there as well. So anything we can do to help you guys out, that'd be awesome. So
thank you. Thanks, Kevin, for joining us and hanging around here for a
Thank you,
bit.
gentlemen. It was a good discussion.
very cool. All right, David, I'm going to take us home. You ready?
Roll.
David's shocked I can push a button. Don't forget to subscribe and like, everybody. We'll see you next Thursday. Cheers.